by the tenant has been dismissed for default. Going forward, now the charitable trust has filed an application for eviction. In that, they file an application under Section 114 of Transfer of Property Act. So this is very interesting because when an application under Section 114 of Transfer of Property Act is filed, which necessarily means that the tenant is agreeing to the tenancy and is agreeing to the payment in lieu of eviction. So what the court said is the statement made in application filed along with 114 application, the landlord-tenant relationship is admitted, and every averment made by the trust is admitted. So in such case, the court can go ahead and pass a judgment on admission. So when I say, why I say that this is a landmark precedent is, this is the case where the court listed the essentials. Essentials are, there should be an admission. Admission should be unequivocal and clear and unambiguous. And the person making an admission should be intending to be bound by it. So these are the necessary criteria that the court listed. In this case, the court said the relationship of lessor and lessee is proved, the notice of termination of lease is served on the club, non-payment of rent is accepted. So all these three are accepted. In such case, it is a judgment. So the court, the plaintiff is entitled to get a judgment on admission. So this was held very detailedly in Karam Kafi's case. Now, going into the second question. The provision says in pleading or otherwise. So pleading means we all know plain and notice statement. What does otherwise mean? Otherwise is interpreted very widely to include anything, right? So when I say pleadings include plain and notice statement and documents filed along with it. When I say otherwise, it includes anything. So I mean, I don't want to give a very wide interpretation to it, but the courts have chosen to give a very wide interpretation to the term otherwise. This started in Ellis versus Allen in Chancery Division. This is 1914 Chancery Division before London. So in this court, what has happened is basically the court for the first time has chosen to give a very detailed interpretation to this. So there is a necessary implication in the lease deed where the lessor was prohibited from subletting it. What happened is the lessor admitted to have sublet the premises. So the court said when there is an admission to that effect. Now the question is to that point. When a question has been answered by the defendant's admission, then the plaintiff is entitled to judgment on admission. So this is, in my opinion, Ellis versus Allen, and there is another case of Chancery Division's Court. These two cases, Topwood's case, these two cases are the cases that molded this provision. Okay, in Ellis versus Allen, if you ask me, several questions have been discussed. That is very lengthy precedent. But going into the particular question at hand, this answers that the entitlement to a decree, entitlement to a judgment under Order 12 Rule 6 has to be construed as a beneficial provision favoring the person who secures such admission. So if you read this extract, it says the object of the rule was to enable a party to obtain speedy justice, where the other party has made a plain admission entitling the former to succeed. I do not think Rule 6 should be confined as suggested. In my judgment, it is applied wherever there is a clear admission of facts and in the fact of which is impossible for a party making it to succeed. So in this case, they said not necessarily in pleadings, it can be made anywhere. Otherwise, has been given very vast interpretation in this case. Now going forward, another case where Uttam Singh Dagal versus Union Bank of India. This is also a very important precedent where the court has discussed what does otherwise mean. In this case, balance sheet and minutes of meetings of the defendant has been relied upon by the plaintiff. So Union Bank of India is a plaintiff, Uttam Singh Dagal is the defendant in the suit. Before Supreme Court, the appellant averred that the balance sheet and minutes of meeting cannot be relied upon. What the court said is the balance sheet and minutes of meeting reading together contains whatever that is necessary to satisfy the cause of action and the relief sought for by the plaintiff. That is for naturally for recovery of money. The court said the balance sheet and minutes of meeting will come under the definition of otherwise. So it can be relied upon to pass a judgment on admission. Okay. Now here important point is court clearly said admissions are of many kind. They may be considered as being on this record as actual if that is either in the pleadings or an answer to interrogatories or implied from pleadings by non-traversal. Secondly, as between parties by agreement or notice. Since we have considered that admission for passing the judgment is based on pleadings itself, it is unnecessary to examine that to what kind of admissions are covered under Order 12 Rule 6 CPC. So they said it can be anything, but however in this case, let's not go into what kind of admissions are covered under this provision. So in my opinion, so when they say pleading or otherwise, the intent of the lawmakers is to give it a very wide interpretation. That is one. Now, I have also put a precedent on the last line, Indian Bank versus SN Engineers. So this is a very recent precedent where the Supreme Court said, it ruled against Indian Bank and said where Indian Bank has undertaken to clear checks presented by SN Engineers and suppliers for a value of 6 lakhs and odd, 6,80,000 if I remember rightly. So in such case, what happened is when such a letter of undertaking is given by Indian Bank, they have breached it. And when a suit is filed, Indian Bank in the written statement did not specifically deny or explain the reason behind such admission. What court said is you are bound by such admission, and the SN Engineers, there is a plaintiffs are entitled to a judgment on admission. So this is a recent precedent where it's a very short precedent, but the court relied on all the decisions and held that the plaintiffs are entitled to judgment on admission. Now going forward, oral or in writing. It can be oral or in writing. If you see the 54th Law Commission report, in the second point, it says the rule has been held to be wide enough to cover oral admissions. Now, another question which generally would arise is, how do I prove oral admission? When a party makes an oral admission, I can aver that in my plaint. And when the defendant denies it in the written statement, there is no question because that oral admission has to be proved by trial. Anything that requires trial cannot come under the purview of Order 12 Rule 6. But when I make such an averment in my plaint and the defendant does not deny or the defendant admits to such oral statement, then I can take a judgment on admission based on such oral admission. Okay, so proving oral admission might be a task. Whenever the burden is on the proponent to prove a particular admission, in oral cases, it is little harder, in my opinion, to prove. But if it's in writing, it is on the other party, that is a defendant, to prove how it does not amount to admission. Now, may. Of course, everybody knows that the word may necessarily means discretionary. So, we cannot assume that since there is discretionary power, the court can use discretion as it pleases, because, of course, judicial activism and judicial review covers discretionary. It has to be exercised within limited bounds, and arbitrary exercise attacks judicial review. Okay, so now when the wide discretionary power is given to court, when you analyze it, it is basically given because to fit into every single case, because every single case carries a unique factual bundle. So when a unique factual bundle comes before the court, what is admission and what is relevant admission, what is unequivocal admission, is a question depending on the facts of every case. So that's the way, if you could see Section 58 of Evidence Act as well as Order 8 Rule 5, the proviso says, provided that the court may, in its discretion, require any facts so admitted to be proved otherwise than by such admission. This is given because such discretion has to rest with the judicial forum, because in the opinion of judicial forum, the provable point in a particular case may still be provable despite admission. Okay, so discretionary power is given to court to make sure that this provision is not misused at any stage of the suit. I don't think this requires much of explanation. In my opinion, at any stage of the suit, exactly resembles the wordings of Order 1 Rule 10, which is impleading of parties. So similarly, the court at any stage of the suit can make a judgment on admission, and either by application of a party or by its own. See, before amendment, it was just by application. After 1976 amendment, the wordings or by its own motion, that is, suo motu power has been given. Just because a party chooses not to file an application under Order 12 Rule 6, the right of the party should not be taken for granted. So the court has been given suo motu power to make a judgment on admission even without application of the party. 1976 amendment, as I said, gives enormous teeth to this provision to make sure that this provision is effectively implemented. Now, going into without waiting for determination of any other question. Yes, so when I say this, I have to rely upon this important precedent, in my opinion, which is a very classic precedent. Thorpe versus Holsworth. Just a minute. Yeah, this is 1876 Chancery Court, where the court said there are, I would like to read the exact words of the judge. If you have an agreement for lease containing 50 stipulation made by the parole, and the plaintiff and the defendants both agreed that there was such an agreement, and except as to one of the 50 stipulations that it had been carried out and acted upon, what would be said as court of justice if it allowed the defendant simply to deny that there was any agreement as alleged? So the court says when there are 50 points to be discussed, when 49 points are accepted, the judgment on admission has to be made relating to those 49 points, and one question whether it requires trial or not, it has to go. It has to, I mean, that question has to be decided through trial. That's what the court said in Thorpe versus Holsworth. It's a very important precedent on this point. So for an illustration as I given, see, when there is a claim for 1,000 rupees and the defendant has agreed that he has borrowed 500 rupees, a court can make a judgment for payment of 500 rupees. And the case relating to the residue amount, that is 500 rupees, can be dealt with, I mean, after going through trial. So this is a prerogative provision of the court, where the court can pass a judgment on admission without waiting for determination of any other question, because we all know in one suit there will be 100 questions to be determined. If court can decide 50 questions, court can pass a part decree and can decide the rest of the questions later. Yeah, make judgment or make order or judgment as it may think fit. So order or judgment, so it necessarily means court can make an order also. This also applies to IAS, right? So this does not mean only a judgment should be passed. We all know order and judgment has been defined in CPC, but when a judgment or order is made, it has to be recent. If you see section 2.9 and 2.14 of CPC, the judgment or order or anything that is passed has to carry a recent. It should be a recent judgment or order. Yeah, so decree shall be drawn up. The word decree shall be drawn up was not there in the original provision. It has been added in 1976. The reason behind, in my opinion, this has not been discussed in any case, but in my opinion, the reason behind adding decree shall be drawn up is to give enforceability on this. See, let us say there is a case where a part of the case has been decided and judgment has been passed. If a decree is not drawn up, I have no means to enforce that part. I have to wait for the case to end and then I have to file an EP. But by virtue of 1976 amendment, if the court is passing a separate decree for that part of the suit which has come to determination, I can still enforce it. So this amendment has been carried out necessarily to give an enforceability to a part decree. Yeah, now let's go into the circumstances under which a judgment on admission can be refused. First one, declaratory suits. Before I get any questions on this, saying whether all declaratory suits are barred from being decided under Order 12 Rule 6, no, it's not so. When I say, because I wanted to put this as a topic, because if you see section 34 and 35 specifically, in fact, declaration by itself is a discretionary relief. Okay, so discretion of the court is there when we seek a declaration. So in such case, the court, the declaration seeker has to prove his right to seek a declaration despite admission. Whatever the admission be, the seeker of declaration has to prove his right to get such declaration. This has been decided in Razia Begum versus Shaibzadi Anwar Begum. So this is a very interesting case where the facts are very interesting, where the plaintiff has sought for a declaration that she is a legally wedded wife of one prince. The prince has filed a written statement saying it has been admitted, so she is my legally wedded wife. Another woman files a application under Order 1 Rule 10 to implead, to come into the picture because she is a legally wedded wife. The husband says, yes, she is also my legally wedded wife. I am a Muslim. I have right to marry 4 women. So now the impleading proposed parties, they say a judgment on admission cannot be passed because it would affect our right also. So here the court says, here the trial court has said it will not affect the right of the impleading party because the right of the plaintiff and the proposed parties are independent from each other, because the defendant is permitted to marry 4 women as per Muhammadan law. But Supreme Court has said this is not as simple as that. The declaration sought by the plaintiff against the defendant is a declaration against the whole world, declaration of status. When a declaration of status is made, it affects known and unknown parties. So in such case, despite admission, the declaration seeker has to prove that she has right to get such declaration. Going forward, that is one. And second one, suit requiring proof despite admission. In some cases, even though an admission is made, the suit may require some other proof. We all know Balraj Taneja, that is a landmark precedent under Order 8, Rule 5. So this is a case where a judgment on admission, sorry, I shouldn't say it's a judgment on admission, a judgment under Order 8, Rule 5 has been passed, which is quite similar, because when written statement is not filed, or when specific denial is not given the written statement, it is considered to be admission. The facts of the case is that the sale consideration was 7 lakhs, and advance of 4 lakhs has been paid, and the remaining 3 lakhs has to be paid in two parts: one 75,000 upon execution, and 2,25,000 after getting a sale permission from the income tax department. So it is a suit for specific performance. In the suit for specific performance, what has happened is the defendant did not file a written statement. The court has, since the written statement has not been filed, court has construed admission and passed a judgment. It went before Supreme Court. Supreme Court held this is absolute wrongful exercise of power, and the court relied upon the proviso to Order 8 Rule 5 and said, when despite admission, let us consider that non-filing of written statement amounts to admission. Even then, there are some other questions which has to be tried, because the plaintiff specifically states the payment of 2,25,000 has to be made after receiving permission of sale from the income tax department. Whether such permission has been received, whether such payment has been made, these are questions of fact that cannot be decided without any adduction of evidence by the plaintiff. So in such case, the court said this is absolute wrong exercise. This has to be set aside, and the court has to try the question. Try all the questions involved in the case. So this is a very important precedent on this point. But Balraj Taneja, in my opinion, will be basically referred in any case where Order 8 Rule 5 is referred to. And irrelevant statement. Nagubai Ammal and others versus B. Shamara. See, anybody who has read this precedent would know that this is one of the most complicated precedents ever. But there is one part in Nagubai Ammal's case. If I have to explain the facts concerning this, Nagubai Ammal itself will take one seminar. It's such a complex set of facts. But what has been held with relation to judgment on admission is a statement, an admission which has been made by itself necessarily need not be conclusive. A statement necessarily need not be conclusive as far as a list in a particular case is concerned. I would like to read this extract. An admission is not conclusive of the truth of the matter stated therein. It is only a piece of evidence, a weight to be attached to which must depend on the circumstances under which it is made. So this is the ratio. So in this case, the defendant would rely, the plaintiff would rely on a statement made by the then defendant saying he has made a statement in the earlier suit where he has said the suit is collusive and not fraudulent. So the court in this case will discuss what is collusive, what is fraudulent. It's a very lengthier decision. And when the court answering application under Order 12 Rule 6 says, just because a statement is made, it necessarily need not constitute admission. Whether it constitutes admission or not has to be decided based on circumstances of every case and circumstances under which it is made. Right? It can be shown to be erroneous or untrue so long as a provision, so long as the person who it was made has not acted upon it to detriment which it may, when it may become conclusive by way of estoppel. That is right. So all these principles has been decided in this case. Ultimately, the court said the statement which has been made must be relevant. When an irrelevant statement has been made, which is not conclusive, a judgment on admission cannot be passed. However, Nagubai Ammal, in my opinion, everybody should go through the precedent because it is a very classic judgment on several points of law. And root of the matter. When a particular question goes into the root of a matter, it cannot be decided at this stage. See, in this case, if you remember the first precedent which I cited, Uttam Singh Dagal, there also a balance sheet and minutes of meeting were referred. Even in this case, balance sheet and minutes of meeting were referred. But in this case, what has happened is the defendant has raised several allegations saying that the suit by itself is not maintainable and there is no signature in the balance sheet and the balance sheet is provisional. So in such case, where the allegations made by the defendant would go on to the root of the matter, a judgment on admission cannot be made because that would necessarily curtail the right of the defendant to try the matter. So anybody's right is basically two sides of the same coin. One is my right to get speedy justice. Other one is the right to defense. So both sides has to be balanced at the same time so that no injustice is caused. So if you see this case, the court has clearly stated when the matter would necessarily go into the root of the matter, this necessarily needs to be subjected to trial and it cannot be decided at the stage of Order 12 Rule 6. And indeliberate and indefinite statement. So the statement which is made should be deliberate. Deliberate means when I make it, I should know why I'm making it and my intention should be to bound by it. An indefinite statement. The statement should be definite, should be conclusive. See, in this case, if you see Rajkumar Chawla versus Lucas Indian Service, there was a record of some meeting. They record a meeting where they say final figure will be arrived later. Sorry, no, it's not the case. I'm sorry. This is a case where there is an admission of a particular amount and for return of goods. That is 36,000 rupees has to be returned and goods worth 1,54,000 rupees has to be returned. So in this case, what has happened is a letter has been sent by the plaintiff and the defendant has replied. In the reply, he has incidentally referred to the balance where he raised several other disputes against the plaintiff. So in this case, it is not deliberate and it's not definite. So a statement, just because it infers to some kind of admission, cannot be considered admission. It is highly necessary that the statement must be deliberate and definite. So that has been held in this case. Yes, inconclusive. As I said before, here a minutes of meeting is there. There is no doubt that minutes of meeting can be referred because it comes under the definition otherwise. But here, in the minutes of meeting, there is the last sentence says, final figure will be arrived at the meeting accordingly. So which means the question of final figure is kept open. It is not conclusive. The right of either party is not concluded. When nothing is concluded, it is inconclusive. So inconclusive statements cannot be relied upon to make a judgment on admission. So from this, what we understand is a statement must be absolute. It should be whole. It should be conclusive. It should be independent of any proof. And it should answer the question that is required to decide the right of the parties to the suit. So these are the essentials of a judgment on admission. And going forward, admission dependent on determination of another question. This is a precedent of 2015. Justice R. Bhanumati penned down this precedent. I, for one, do not agree with this precedent, but however, I'm not a Supreme Court judge, so whatever they say is right. So in this case, what has happened is the suit is for eviction. So the landlord has filed a suit for eviction. The tenant has filed a suit for specific performance. And the tenant says, since my suit for specific performance pending, I cannot be evicted. But he admits to the tenancy, he admits to the admits to execution of lease deed, admits that the lease deed has been determined by a flux of time and everything. But however, the court in this case says, since it goes into determination of another question, this suit cannot be decided at the stage of Order 12 Rule 6. It has to be decided by detailed trial along with the suit for specific performance. Why, as a person, I do not agree with this is, the suit filed by the landlord is for recovery of possession. The only thing that has to be considered is the right of the landlord as a landlord to recover possession. So in my opinion, the landlord has right to recover the possession, and if at all the defendant, that is the tenant, has any right under the sale agreement, it is for him to prove. It is for him to prove by conducting trial in that case, and if at all he has any right, he can recover possession. But the court, in my opinion, is wrong in saying that in the suit for recovery of possession by the landlord has to be necessarily decided only after a conclusion of specific performance, suit for specific performance is wrong. However, as on date, this is the law. So see, these are the basic points, but Order 12 Rule 6 is a very detailed provision, and I've written a very detailed article on this, and all these judgments which I've referred here, I've extracted the facts, extracted the ratio decidendi, and if anybody requires any judgment on this, you can visit this link, and the article is uploaded there. If there is any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Andra,
My video,
can you send that?
Please wait, sir. Hello, Dandu. Hello, Anand. How's my video can be on? Put on. Anand? Hello. Yes. Hello. Thank you very much, Mr. Dhanram. Nicely
Thank you.
presented. Nicely presented. Though I introduced you as a junior in the introduction time, but whereas you have represented the total issue in a nutshell, but even though you have explained the sections, also the with citations, very nice presentation. Thank you very much. And thank you for all participants.
One second, I want to ask a question.
Oh, wait, sir. I will finish up, then I will ask you to one by one ask the question. Please wait. Yes, sir. Hello. Thank you for all the participants who are all participated in this webinar. Also, thank you very much for Dhanram for the nice presentation. Anand, one by one you can unmute him, then you ask one question. Any questions, any clarification that they can ask directly to Mr. Dhanram. Thank you very much for all.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Ramesh sir wanted to ask a question.
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Now then Ramesh sir can ask the question.
In a suit, when there are more than one relief sought for, hello,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
if in a suit more than one relief is sought for,
Yes, sir.
various prayers are made in one suit, where admission is only for one and judgment can be passed, whether other suit can continue, other portion of the suit can continue.
Exactly, sir. It can, but again, the question has to be considered on whether the suit is divisible. If a suit is divisible, yes, it can. But if the determination of the second question is imminent to decide the first question, then it cannot be.
Means I don't get.
So let me give you a picture where there are two questions. One is for in a suit you ask for recovery of money and recovery of possession. So the defendant has admitted, saying the money.
No. Once again. Before going to that, say for example, the money suit is for 1 crore. Say for recovery of money of 1 crore, in which the admission is for 50 lakhs.
Yes.
Then what will happen to then for that whether it can be divisible?
Exactly, sir. Why not? Because it is one suit where the suit is for recovery of money, but the defendant has agreed. This is the exact case of Ellis versus Allen. So the court has power to pass a decree for recovery of that 50 lakhs first. And as far as the rest of the 50 lakhs is concerned, the suit can continue.
Continue for trial.
Yes. Any case for that matter, any case where admission has been made, that effect, judgment and decree can be passed.
In effect, it is like interlocutory proceedings or interlocutory decree.
Not exactly, sir. Because why I would say so is in interlocutory case, in the interlocutory applications, the right has not been determined. The right is kept in abeyance. So, but in the case where part judgment is made under Order 12, Rule 6, the right has been determined as far as the part of the list is concerned.
Decree is passed.
Yes, yes. It's enforceable by itself.
Got it.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Watson. Is there anybody else? Should I have?
Thank you, Zanva.
Thank you. Is there any questions? I have uploaded the link in the chat. You can article. I have extracted all the precedents by facts and ratio. You can give your comments as well.
Any questions?
Dhanram, can we get that text, Dhanram, can you send by WhatsApp itself?
I'll send it to you by WhatsApp, sir. But however, I uploaded here in chat also. You can click the link.
How could I get that?
It is right there in this chat. If you can see your screen, there is an option.
Yeah, I see the chart. I copy it. Then what?
Click the link. Just click the link.
Okay. After closing the meeting, how can I get it?
Okay, I'll do one thing, sir. I'll just. No.
இதுல ரெக்கார்ட் நம்ம ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ண முடியாது சார். நீங்க தான் அட்மின் தான் ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ண முடியும்.
இல்ல. I'm not talking about recording, sir. I'm talking about the article.
The article itself, yeah.
If you just see the chat, it is very much there. So, but anyway, I'll WhatsApp it.
Let me say.
We will upload in the group, sir. We will upload in the group.
Yeah.
We will upload in the group totally, including the link.
Yes, sir.
Dhanram.
Yes, sir.
Let me do this thing. I copy it in the chart itself. and close the screen and get another any WhatsApp or anything, and can I send it to somebody and get it? That way I can do. Can I do that?
In the chat, your number may please be given. That we will upload it and we will send to you in person. No problem, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Will do.
Just to give you a
முடிமன்னன்
yes, sir.
முடிமன்னன்
Yes, yes. சொல்லுங்க சார். இல்ல கேள்வி கேட்கணும் அவர்கிட்ட நான் கேட்டிருக்கேன் ஃபர்ஸ்ட்.
இல்ல அந்த லிங்க் வந்து உங்களுக்கு நான் வாட்ஸ்அப்ல அனுப்பிச்சிருக்கேன். அவரோட சொன்ன லிங்க் காப்பி பண்ணி அனுப்பிச்சிருக்கேன். நீங்க மத்தவங்களுக்கு அப்படியே ஃபார்வர்ட் பண்ணிடலாம்.
ஓகே ஓகே நான் பண்ணிடுறேன். அதான் சொன்னேன் நான் பண்ணிடுறேன்னு சொன்னேன்.
இல்ல பண்ணிட்டேன் உங்களுக்கு பண்ணிட்டேன். அத நீங்க அப்படியே பண்ணிருங்க. எல்லாத்துக்கும் பண்ணிருங்க. ஃபார்வர்ட் பண்ணுங்க.
For all the participants we will send it. Overall only in the name. Please give the name number in the chat that we will forward it. No problem. Okay.
Is there anything else on the questions? If
Sir,
you have
in
questions on
the
subject,
interaction, any questions from any
Mudiman.
person? Sir, Uttral sir. Anything to say?
Dandra, question.
Yeah. Sir, senior.
Can you hear me, Dandra?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm able to hear you, sir.
What about section 11 CPC for this admission or judgment?
Section 11 CPC, I do not have.
Adjudicator, will it operate as a adjudicator for others?
So I'm not quite sure, sir, because adjudicator has nothing to do with Order 12 rule states.
No. Whether this degree will.
Any counter claims?
Yes, exactly, sir. See that because it will not act as an adjudicator, because adjudicator necessarily bars the parties to the suit.
The parties to the suit.
Yes, sir. Exactly. So
If
that
there is
is
any another cause of action in spite of this judgment, they
Yes.
can file a separate suit.
they can file a separate suit. This
Not on same cause of action.
yes, exactly, sir. This question was put forward in Razia Begum's case,
Yeah.
where the court said that is why if at all the second wife initiates another suit, so she'll be bound by this judgment. That is why the courts have clearly stated judgment on admission cannot be made in every case. But in a case where rights of third party is affected, or in the case of declaratory suits where the right to declare must be proved despite admission, this cannot be relied upon.
Yes. So only for the sake of viewers, I asked this question.
Yes, sir. But again, in my opinion, we should start using this provision. In cases we never use it. But
Sparingly we are using it, but High Court is not accepting this. Why don't you go for trial? That is a single, they don't want to write judgment on this aspect. Where is that Maitri? Maitri was there. I saw his face. Maitri,
Yes, sir. சொல்லுங்க சார். I'm here, sir.
do you have any doubt to join?
No,
as
sir.
Any questions?
No, nothing, sir.
Please ask.
Nothing, sir.
Congratulations for coming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I joined little bit late, sir.
I know that.
Yeah.
I think there is no.
I will check the recording. I will check the link, sir. Entire recording. I will check, verify it from first, sir.
Sir, யாரு?
முடிமன்னன்
சொல்லுங்க சார், க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிடலாமா?
இல்ல I have a doubt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are that is waiting for you.
Okay.
Yes.
It is addressed to the speaker.
yes, sir.
Yes,
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
See, one person is filing a suit asking for declaration of some documents as null and void.
Yes, sir.
Facts are he is buying a property from X.
Hmm.
Sale deed was executed by X and also on behalf of his principal. Both. There are four principal, there are four properties. He is selling only two properties. So he is accordingly executing the sale deed.
Yes, sir.
Subsequently, A, B, C, all these people fabricate some documents as if given by other owners.
Yes, sir.
And they create some sale also.
Okay.
But the buyer comes to it later. So he files a suit asking for declaration to declare the bogus sale deeds executed by these people. In the written statement, the concerned defendants whose name has been used for making the forged documents,
Hmm.
deny in the written statement stating that those documents were never executed by us.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the other defendants who purchase the property based on the fabricated documents,
Hmm.
they take a different plea.
Yes.
So the main prayer is to declare these forged documents as null and void,
Hmm.
created by, say, defendant 1 and 2.
Yes, sir.
Defendant 1 and 2 filed written statement denying that they never executed such documents. They are all rank forgeries.
Yes, sir.
So under this circumstance,
Hmm.
can the plaintiff file a petition under Order 12 Rule 6 saying that it has been admitted by 1 and 2, stating just two defendants have clearly stated that they have not executed, and based on this, the documents are to be declared as null and void?
He cannot, sir. Basically, the first one is it is a declaratory suit.
Okay.
So we have to consider what is the right that is involved, right in personam or right in rem. Whenever there's a right in rem is involved, in my opinion, and as per the decisions of the court, a judgment on admission cannot be made because a declaration by itself is a discretionary relief. Why I say so is it is a triable issue, whether the document is forged or whether it has been executed by them or whether they have executed under undue influence or duress is a question of fact which requires addition of evidence.
No, these two people clearly admit then we never executed such document. They are all rank forgeries created in our name.
Yes. So, but
only based on these two forged documents, the other people have entered into transactions.
Yes, sir. So now the question is, if at all, in my opinion, the test for considering whether a judgment on admission can be or cannot be made is very simple. We have to consider if at all a judgment has been made against a party, whose right will be affected. If the rights of the affected party, let us say A and B are there, and C's right would be affected. In this case, defendant D3 and D4's right will be affected. So yes. D3 and D4 will also, must also come under this unequivocal admission. An admission made by defendant D1 and D2 by itself will not be considered as admission. But what you say is right when you consider the when you go to trial. When you go to trial, the weightage on the evidence of D1 and D2 will be given. But as you, when you see this provision, it says a statement made by the parties to the suit. So the party who makes a statement must be binding himself, and he can bind himself all he wants, but he cannot take away the right of a party who had made no statement. So the right of D3 and D4 also needs to be protected, and on the other hand, it is a declaratory suit. So in a declaratory suit, this